Steve Moran here with Senior Living Foresight. I'm actually really pumped up about this session that we are doing today for Leading Age Maryland. I've got Ashley Crichton. And are you related? I got to ask, are you related to the author?
I'm not, but if I say I am, do I win a prize or no?
Well, I don't know. You might be worth lots of money if you did, if they were generous, right? So that's a great thing.
I'm not.
And Ashley's actually a new friend to me, but Dan Gemp, who is the CEO of Dreamscape Marketing, is a longtime friend and somebody who I have tremendous respect for. Today, we are going to be talking about dining, marketing, and senior living. So there are four critical issues that face every single senior living community. The first is trying to figure out what residents really want in senior living. Boomers' tastes, we know, are different. We don't quite know what they're going to like. They don't even know what they want, which makes this really tough. The second thing is, how do we get staffing right? The third is, how do we stay full or get full, depending on what your circumstances is? And that's really what we're focusing on today. And then the last thing, which we're not really going to talk about, it may have some relevance, is how do we control cost? So we're going to talk today about how dining and marketing drive occupancy. Because when you have high occupancy, it actually makes everything better. It's like having a full tank of gas versus trying to worry about whether or not you're going to get to the next gas station. Or if you were a pilot, it would be like having runway ahead of you or air below you. I used to teach flying, and we always say altitude sort of makes everything better. And occupancy makes everything better. You can serve residents better and everything. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. I'll just give you a big overview, and then I'm going to actually have Ashley and Dan talk a little bit more about who they are and what they do, and then we'll dig right into the conversation. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the underlying motivations, desires, and lifestyle requirements are for residents and their children when they think about living in senior living community. And we're going to really talk about this question of how do you leverage food and lifestyle and wellness to increase occupancy? And then how do you use digital marketing to reinforce the idea that senior living is the greatest place to live out your last years? So let's actually do, well, no, we're going to leave the slides up first. But Ashley, let's start and talk. Who are you?
So who am I? Hi, Steve. Thank you for the introduction. So my name is Ashley Crichton. Unfortunately, like I said, not related to the author. I've been in senior living for about 10 years, maybe actually going on 11. I grew up as a student of elder care. My grandparents went into long-term care and skilled nursing when I was an early teen. And by the time I reached 17, my family members had reached a point in long-term care where they started to lose dexterity. They started to not be able to eat the foods that we're able to eat right now. And I noticed that the industry didn't offer options for people as they age in dining. So my passion and my career expertise has become, how can we help seniors across the entire continuum, whether it is independent living, skilled and personal care, and to make sure that they're eating healthy foods and that we're approaching dining in an innovative and a really fun way. So that is a little bit about me, and yeah.
And you're the Director of Business Development for Unidine. Got to get that plug in, right? Got to get that plug in.
I will. I mean, I guess I can throw that in there, but yes, I'm a Director of Business Development, and I focus on.
And Dan, that's kind of a big act to follow, but tell me about who you are and your passion for senior living.
Sure. So I'm Dan Gemp. I'm the CEO of Dreamscape Marketing. I have the ability to eat the food that Unidine serves, especially when it's at our clients' locations. We've been around 16 years. We're a national digital marketing agency. We've always specialized in residential healthcare, so addiction treatment, senior care, autism care, and especially with the onset of COVID, our services have never been in higher demand in senior care communities because they directly drive census. And a lot of our research, everything we do is data backed, right? I'm not one of those creative visionaries that makes everybody have just heard of your brand. We use data-backed strategies to get you ranking higher on Google and directly drive census. So our goal is to help you generate more of your own inbound inquiries instead of having to use lead aggregators. And we've developed very unique partnerships as a result with groups like Unidine, because we find that the components, things like pictures of your menus and food, things we might dive into a little bit today, they can increase the conversion rate on your website, not by a little bit, but drastically massive sea change level digital marketing, just from featuring simple lifestyle components other than your luxury amenities. So that's the perspective I'll be talking from today, is that data-backed digital marketing Google perspective.
And I'll be talking through the lens of the lifestyle and what we're going to be, highlighting that people are eating and looking for as we approach the next generation of senior living.
Terrific. I am really excited about that. Let's actually go ahead and turn the slide off now, so we're just going to have a little conversation here about how to make, our goal for you for this session is to help you have a better community, have higher occupancy, lower turnover, all those good things. So the first question I want to actually talk about is that there's sort of this big dilemma in senior living that we're really struggling with. Are we a care community? Are we a lifestyle community? Is it healthcare? What is it? And I'd love to, let's start Ashley with you, and then we'll move on to Dan.
So I believe when we talk about senior living, it is not necessarily a hospital. This isn't a dry institutional environment. When we think about senior living today and long-term care, it can be a continuation of lifestyle. And although it may end up ultimately being, a way to get care and be able to have somebody to help you to do the things that you're not able to do, when we position senior living, especially within dining, we don't want to take away from the current lifestyle. What we want to do is enhance the lifestyle and make it even better possibly than it was before. So we can't approach dining and senior living like we have in the past, where it was institutionalized. And now we want to approach it from a lifestyle model.
Perfect. And Dan?
I would say that it's where hospitality meets healthcare, right? So it is community. But I was asked recently to draw a parallel, like what is senior care most similar to? And I said college campuses. And it's because it's lifestyle, right? You're living there, you're participating in community, really at any level of care, right? You're eating 3 meals a day and a lot of snacks there. And so it is the closest life experience to college. It's a specific age group and demographic typically. So it really is hospitality meets healthcare. And you don't make the decision necessarily based on one or the other. They both matter. So you want to eat good food with good people, and you want to be comfortable in case you're also in need of medical care or have a spouse who is, or something like that. So it's very much an active community, but it's not meant to be marketed like an apartment. It's not meant to be transactional. It's meant to be experiential.
Yeah.
I actually, something just came to mind. It was a conversation I had with a resident about a month ago. We met with a resident who was touring one of our communities in Pennsylvania, and he was there on behalf of not only himself, but his wife. And this particular resident, his name was Cal, he lived in independent living, where his wife lived in skilled nursing, actually in memory care. So one of the questions that he had for me was, how can I make sure that my wife is going to get the same food and the same dignified service that I'm getting in independent living? So when you have seniors shopping in your community that are looking at, whether it's assisted living, whether it's CCRC, they want to see, are things going to change for me as I get older, or are they going to change for somebody that I care about, that I'm moving in with? Because this is a very real situation, and this does happen on a daily basis.
Yeah, there's no question that that's true. Dining is the thing that touches residents essentially every resident multiple times every day. And you can't really say that about any other aspect of senior living. And so it's just absolutely critical. So I want to actually now sort of jump to the other side of this equation that we sort of struggle with, talk about, think about. we've seen a huge amount of amenity creep in senior living over the last 10 years. And so each time a operator, a developer builds a new building, they look to make the amenities bigger, better, more expensive, more wonderful. And the question I've never been quite sure of, and love to hear your thoughts on, is that necessary? Does it help market it? Does it help the experience for residents? Or does it, I don't know, do I dare say this? Is it just wasted money? And Dan, I'm going to start with you on this one.
If it's not marble and gold, nobody wants it, right? I think that developers have gone almost too far. There's this mass confusion, especially as a marketing guy, right? Between amenities and luxury and what consumers actually want. And the pitch is actually about comfort and respect. And I'm most of my commentary today is going to be from the CCRC and assisted living, independent living models. This does apply to everybody, but in skilled nursing, we're talking about a post-acute situation where there's a medical and a therapy need. I'm talking about consumer choice when they get to choose whom to pay their life savings to all the way until it's gone, okay? So is it luxury that you're all shopping for? Is it marble and gold? Is that what makes you comfortable? Is that where you want to invite your grandchildren to have lunch with you? And where you intend to wine and dine guests and hang out with your friends? So I think there's been this confusion. About 20% of residents, this is from a study from Retirement Dynamics, they are looking for amenities. But that's 1 in 5. The other 80% are shopping for something else. And a lot of the data we're seeing, there's not as much concern about COVID as you would think. That was like a top 10 thing last year, but it did not ever breach top 7. It was still ability to afford a community, who else lives there, timing and availability, that sort of thing. So a lot of the interests are social, as mine would be as well, right? How good is life going to be once I make the move? If I'm downsizing to do this and I'm selling my home of 40 years, 50 years, is this going to be better? And I get to spend all that money from my house on something awesome. So I do want everyone to think a bit more experiential, that this isn't a real estate transaction. The developers think that way. You want to build the biggest, shiniest, most beautiful building ever. And I'm going to make the argument that no matter how beautiful you make it now, 20 years from now, it's going to register to people the way shag carpets did, from the 70s. So, the wood paneling walls and the shag carpets used to be on point. So this confusion actually creates an opportunity that you can feature other things, right? No matter what your level of luxury is, you can provide amazing food service, for example, right? Or you can have an awesome bar, or you can have an amazing social coordinator that has just, dance classes every day. Every man over 80 is doing yoga. Like, you can have this fun, enjoyable lifestyle just because of how you operate. And I think that, what we've learned in the space is that's where marketing has been the weakest. And it's also where there's the most inexpensive, high converting opportunity. So don't just market, we've got a basketball court that no one ever uses, right? Market lifestyle, market comfort, and cover more than just marble and gold, right? It's not about the thread count of the sheets you use, but it is about how good the food is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always interesting to me that so much of the marketing is focused on those things. But the one thing that makes senior living unique is that you've got people living together. So it's an opportunity to create relationships, to break bread at a table together.
It's community. You're not shopping for a hospital. You're shopping for a place to live.
Yep. Ashley?
Yeah, and when I think about, though, instead of just focusing on the amenities themselves, like Dan said, even if I think about the pool and different things that are supposed to draw people in, what ends up drawing people in is word of mouth when the residents are satisfied. So What you have to actually focus on instead of the amenities, or in addition to some of the amenities, would be the infrastructure. So we look at hospitality, for example. If you have the right hospitality philosophy, culinary philosophy, these certain components are going to be fundamental, because trends change. There are going to be changes in the way that we see food, like Dan said, 20 years from now. So you may make this space and it's going to be modern, and 20 years from now, it's going to be obsolete. But if you can carry a hospitality mindset and a culinary philosophy, that's probably going to outweigh an amenity like Starbucks coffee or a wine bar that may not be popular in 20 years.
So do we have a perception problem, Ashley, about dining and dining services in senior living?
I don't know. It's an interesting question, because I don't think we have a perception problem per se, but I don't believe senior living dining is today what it was 20 years ago. So in the past, perception of the nursing home dining experience and somebody sitting at a table without a tablecloth that has a plate of food that doesn't really look appealing, something that I saw 20 years ago when I went to my first skilled nursing facility that my grandfather lived in. There may be that perception of long-term care food, nursing home food. So to me, the answer actually is yes, we do have a perception problem. But I think as the boomer generation is coming in, we are starting to see that senior living dining can be a fun experience. It is a lifestyle continuation. You don't have to sacrifice foods that you enjoy as you move into a senior living community. So maybe there is a problem with perception. If Dan.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I actually think from a marketing perspective, there's a major problem with perception. I'll talk about, the contrast between millennial foodies and senior foodies a little bit later, where it's a priority. But from a perception standpoint, there's a spectrum here, right? We're on two ends of a spectrum, right? At some communities, you can go to a generic, somewhat featureless lunchroom, right? A cafeteria, a dining hall. And it's actually labeled that, by the way. There's a big, boring font sign above the entrance that says dining room, right? And then there's others. Ashley and I were looking at one recently where, I hope I can afford to live there, because it's not the dining room. It's not, hey, meet me in the lunch hall. It's the bistro. And where would you rather eat? Where, if you're my client and I'm taking you out to lunch, do you want to meet me at the bistro or the food court at the mall, right? And so there's this perception just from, as a consumer, you're like, I want to feel fancy. Maybe I like wine in a box, but if it's in a bottle, it feels fancier, right? So, thinking about where you'd rather eat, right, for your dining experience, and then vocabulary too, right? There's a close link between cuisine and lifestyle and perception of quality. Okay, so this perception, I think it's off in the industry, but it's also not hitting that goal of quality food, quality menus, quality living. So, what's more appealing, right? This lunchroom or the bistro, that exclusivity that comes with it. And do you want to hear about a dietary staff or a culinary team, right? Do you want to meet a dietitian or a chef with a cool accent? And so that concept, even just walking in, do you want to be greeted by a host or a maître d'? And so that's where I think this becomes a marketing conversation. This perception can be resolved with vocabulary, right? Do you want a front desk person in your community or a concierge? Okay. And all of these words I'm using, this is just marketing buzzwords, but that is lifestyle that I'm communicating. I would like to go see the maitre d' at the restaurant after meeting with the concierge who made the arrangements for me at the bistro, right? I don't want to ask the front desk lady to make me a booking at the lunch hall, right? It's awkward. It sounds funny. It sounds like a joke, but those are the experiences people are having. So to wrap that up, I think you can do that with vocabulary, or right in our program at Unidine, it's pictures, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words, and well-cooked scallops are worth their weight in gold if properly featured on your website, we've learned.
So I'm gonna go just a little off script here, and this is gonna probably apply to you, Ashley, more than Dan, but you may have some thoughts about it. it seems like one of the challenges that any senior living culinary program has is creating meaningful experiences. Most of us wouldn't want to go to the same restaurant 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year,
Right.
even if all we did is eating out. So how do you actually go about creating experiences so that dining doesn't feel like, to Dan's point, feel like you're going to the dining hall, even if it's labeled a bistro?
So when we look at senior living dining, what we want to offer is variety and excitement. So we're looking at adding something like, for example, a pop-up night. So if you have a restaurant and you have a restaurant in your community where they serve American fare, for example, well, what if you want to introduce something different like a Italian night or a tapas night, something that might be unique and exciting? We don't want to do the same thing over and over again because it becomes monotonous. So the goal is to break the monotony and bring some excitement into the experience. So it's going to become different tasting food paired with an event or an experience for a resident, tapas and beer or wine and cheese, high-end cheese. You just want to make it about the experience and about variety. We also have this concept of ghost kitchens, and a ghost kitchen sounds a little scary and unfamiliar. It is not really a resident-facing term. You don't want to say, hey, Mary, come live here. We have ghost kitchens. What you want to say is, we have 6 different concepts where we serve a variety of food. For example, Mexican, whatever it may be. This way, you're going to present them an experience in different outlets to be enjoyed at various dining venues throughout the community. And you're not locking in to the same restaurant every day.
Perfect. One of the things I keep hearing from both you and Dan that I really like a lot is this idea of creating experiences. It's a concept that needs to be part of our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And fun,
So
and fun
I'm going to
experience.
shift and you feed right into this. Dan, I'm sorry, did I cut you off there?
Well, I was going to say, it's not just Taco Tuesday. It's not theme night. It's fun. It's actual lifestyle and living. Your residents are judging you, and that's your greatest referral source for marketing, right? They're judging you on whether you've been running Taco Tuesday for the last 2 years or whether you change it up. And it's tapas and tequila or whatever it may be.
Yep.
But that variety, or even that concept of locally sourced produce, that matters because it's seasonal. So the menu has to change if you're sourcing produce locally. So some of those concepts, even like the comfort foods, right? In New England, clam chowder is comfort food. In the South, it's weird, but fried chicken is delicious, right?
Yeah.
So the chef knows that. The chef is providing happiness through food. That's their deliverable, right? But you can leverage that in lifestyle marketing.
And to Dan's point about the clam chowder being, makes sense one place and not another, it's called a food microculture. So your microculture within the region and even down to the community will influence resident satisfaction with the different dining options that are available. So you can even drill it down even further through research.
Well, I love this so much because I have this dream. That the experience of living in senior living is so amazing, so terrific, so life transforming, that we will not have a vacancy in the whole country, that we in fact will have waiting list people, because as people get older or people's parents get older, they say, oh man, I know if my mom lived there, or I know if I lived there as an older person, that I'm going to have this amazing last chapters in our life. I think it's possible. And that's what we're really talking about. So I get really excited about that. So I'm going to segue now into dining and marketing itself. How do we use dining to very specifically turbocharge the tour process?
Sure. So on the marketing campaign side, and I know Ashley's got a unique perspective on this. On the marketing side, right, the goal for the last 2 decades in senior care has been, oh yeah, just get them in for a tour. And then, a certain percentage just turn into move-ins, right? And that option was taken off the table, early 2020.
Yeah.
So what you have to do now is demonstrate all of these things that you would experience in person. Things that you'd say on the phone, like, oh, you just have to feel the warmth here. The staff is so great. Oh, you have to try the food. Chef Tony is the best. Well, I'm going to challenge you with, okay, prove it. Show me without me coming there. And that can be done, through photography, through video interviews. If Chef Tony says, hey, your mama is my mama, right? Then you relate, like, oh man, that guy must make awesome lasagna, right? But that's valuable. That's a trust experience without ever going there. And I think people aren't realizing that, when they use phrases like lead nurturing and drip campaigns and follow up, that's what it has to be. It has to be your menu. They have to know that it was created by a nutritionist. So you're not going to be short on zinc and vitamin D and worried about scurvy, right? You're going to be taken care of. And so all those things that might be concerns, those shouldn't even be on their radar. You should be able to give a tour of what life would be like, without just a walking tour, an in-person tour. So pictures of bedrooms, pictures of food, interviews with staff, that's what did the trick. Anyone that had gone digital and had video before COVID, their census maybe took a little dip in May last year. But those that lost half their census, this is where they were weak. I would bet you that a lot that they don't have any pictures of food on their websites.
That's really interesting. So Ashley, how do you turbocharge? How do you become a part of the sales and marketing process in the culinary experience?
So we are, Dan just talked about putting the pictures on the website, right? Pictures tell a story. Well, how do you create those pictures? You have to put the time into the food, right? So if you don't have great food and the food isn't good, I don't see how it's possible to feature that, because it's not going to look appealing. It's not going to draw people in. So I think from a dining perspective, one, it's focusing on the menuing, the type of cuisine that it's appropriate for the region, for the type of population that you're targeting to come and live in your community. So you have to do some research. The other piece is that you have not only the culinary elements, that you're showcasing them properly, that you have the hospitality to go along with that, that you're seeing that service put into pictures. So for example, if you're running an event, if you're having a party, why not invite a photographer? You can get a good photographer for $200. I mean, my 6-year-old is even a pretty good photographer with an iPhone. You'd be amazed. But to bring in a photographer to take pictures of a community event, imagine being able to show that on your website or on your Instagram, which, by the way, more seniors and boomers are starting to adapt to Instagram and Dan, I'm sure, is nodding his head. They're starting to go to that platform as well. It's not just Facebook and website. They're looking now at Instagram too. So you can do a lot of different things with the food. But if you have the experience, educational sessions that you're filming, there are so many different things that you could do. But again, the heart is the culinary piece, great looking food. Because if Chef Tony's lasagna looks like a lump of cheese and you don't know what's going on, there's no garnish, it's not plated nicely, I'm not going to be excited if I'm a potential resident. It's not going to look very good to me.
And there's expectations, right? When we go out to a restaurant, based on the type of restaurant it is, we expect certain levels of presentation, certain types of plating, right? So the senior foodie, right? Your 75, 80-year-old foodie, what are they looking for? There's an affluence there. There's an expectation there. There's a health concern there. But I think you can feature that, the concept of home cooking. Okay, you can still provide home cooking, and it can be, photo friendly and shareable on social media, so that your residents are saying, wow, look at Chef Tony's lasagna, or, oh my God, I'm so happy it's Taco Tuesday. They go all out here. Those kinds of things are how you create a social culture, an experiential kind of a marketing conversation around something like a menu. What's been shocking to me is the conversion rate. It's not just about having those things. When you just throw them on your website in any kind of an organized fashion and use words like culinary and cuisine, we've seen the volume of phone calls go up 30-40%, not a small amount, drastically off the charts growth. So I'm not saying like try these things. I'm saying you must engage the senior boomer foodie. It's a must.
Well, you brought up, Dan, this idea of senior foodies or resident foodies. Is there such a thing, and what are they like, and how are they different from the rest of the residents, and why does it matter? And
Yeah,
let's actually start with Ashley on this.
please, please.
Yeah, I mean, and anybody can be a foodie, but the senior foodie, I think, looks a little bit different when they're looking at the CCRC. They're actually looking now for more wellness focused options and healthy food. You'd be surprised to know that most boomers know what antioxidants are, and most seniors know what antioxidants are. And for example, like a dark chocolate and a raspberry. Think about putting those two things together. You make a dark chocolate raspberry torte. That's something that they're going to begin recognizing, whereas maybe 10 years ago, it would have been a chocolate cake. So there is the need to demonstrate a wellness component. You're going to be looking for different options to think about COVID. You've had 1 year in the house where meal service delivery has taken over as a big part of getting food, right? People used to go out to restaurants more. Now they're more accustomed to ordering. The senior foodie has been ordering food either on the phone or online with apps. Apps are becoming more integrated into dining. So you're going to be looking for options. They want to see that they can order takeout. They can order from their phone. They can do it online. That they want to have different venues they can eat in. They need variety. They need options. And there's also going to be that need. I talked about meeting cultural preferences, but really variety is the spice of life. And they are looking for different things and high quality at that.
And on marketing, you've got to take that message and convert it to lifestyle messaging, right? So, may all of your toast be avocado toast, right? There are food trends. There is artificial meat now, right? Grown in a lab. Is that good or bad? It all depends on how it's marketed, right? So a lot of this, this lifestyle conversation has to be about improving their lifestyle in a community setting, right? So how does food make your life better? Well, what is the setup in your bistro, right? Do you dine with friends? Do you invite your family to come dine with you? Is the food good enough that you feel comfortable and proud doing that? And so looking at the boomer foodie, as a demographic, as a profile, not to simplify your audience, but say 75 to 80-year-old, right? Decades of fine dining, right? In retirement, they enjoyed 20 years of dining out, and they've been to every fancy place in town on anniversaries and celebrations and graduations and birthdays. And then life got a little simpler, and potentially even cooking at home, right? A lot of your residents have a very strong cooking game, right? They should be the chef. You should be so lucky as to be their guest. So their expectation is at least as high as their own skill level in the kitchen. And a lot of the times, if that falls short or the menu is overly simple, right? Protein, starch, vegetable, you can do better than that. And so from a lifestyle perspective, don't let your residents down. Highlight that. Work some of your residents' recipes into your menus occasionally, right? That's always fun. Or at least realize like they're used to the caliber and food presentation of dining out for decades, and maybe they could no longer cook at that level themselves at home. And so they're looking for that experience again. They want it to be a rejuvenating experience because it brings them back to what they're used to.
And one of my thinking about bringing them back to what they're used to, I think about the movie Ratatouille. Have you guys ever seen that movie?
Love that movie.
So, when Ego, the critic, takes that bite and he's sitting at the table and he takes a bite into the ratatouille, and instantly he's brought back to this vision of him sitting at his dinner table and his mom wiping his boogers when he came in from a cold day. Those are the memories that we want to invoke, maybe not the booger messaging, but, when we're thinking about food, the senior foodie wants to also have memories, just like you want to remember, that wonderful experience you had. you want to eat food that creates those memories. So maybe even drawing on foods, like I said, from that microculture, from their past. And you do that by talking to your residents. So if you really want to know what the senior foodie likes, you have to engage with your residents in the community to see what they're looking for and what they want. I had a resident once tell me when I asked her, what are you looking for from dining? And she said, well, it's something you said before. You said the word hospitality. They just want somebody to serve them in a way that's dignified, responsive, and gives them a feeling of welcomeness in their own home and where they're living. Hospitality, a smile, great service goes a long way too.
That's the validation that you're doing it right. That both your dining program, your culinary program, is on point, and that your residents are enjoying it. There's a perceived quality, right? Because they're having, happy thoughts while they're dining, and that's pivotal. Good reviews, and not just from the resident, but imagine a resident and their adult children and their grandchildren all having great experiences. You'll start getting like restaurant reviews for your senior care community. It's amazing, your CCRC. But just some food for thought.
One of the questions I have is that there seems to be a bit of a tug of war between having food that's really yummy or food that's healthy. How do you balance? Is that a balancing act you have to do, or can you do both, or is it one or the other, or how do you address that sort of ongoing challenge?
I can tell you that there is an educational component. So perception is everything, right? So if you are looking to get your residents into a better state of health, because quite frankly, like we talked about, the senior foodie is looking for health and wellness wherever they're going to be living, and that has to be part of dining. We do, for example, some culinary engagement through a program called Culinary Exploration. So what it basically is an educational experience that teaches you about some kind of superfood, specialized ingredients, like I talked about the antioxidant family, like raspberries or dark chocolate, and it takes that ingredient, infuses it into a dish, and teaches the resident actually what's in the dish and how it's made, and then they try it because they've made it themselves. So it gives an opportunity to educate the resident, which is part of that. Food is good for you, but can it still be good, and can it still be comforting? The answer is yes, but there has to be that educational piece for many residents who are coming into community.
Yeah. So by the way, I just want to say that as soon as with all this food talk, as soon as we're done, I've got to go eat. I'm getting hungry just thinking about it.
Are you going to eat a cheeseburger or a Black Angus, low-fat content, locally sourced cheddar burger? Whoa, with bacon jam.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what I'm eating. I'm eating leftover potato salad from the Mother's Day gathering that we had on Sunday.
I know a few.
One of my favorites, homemade. So, Dan, I am operating a senior living community, and I realize that there's this huge opportunity to market, to go after, to target that foodie senior, that foodie older person. How do I go about making that happen?
Sure. So to capitalize on this, and I'm saying that this was one of the most predominant trends we were able to identify from the start of coronavirus, through 2021 here, that the content that was engaged more than before, aside from virtual tours and online assessment kind of questionnaires, was all, photo-based and social media shareable content. So to capitalize on this, start off by, interviewing your culinary team, right? Talking to your suppliers. I mean, Unidine provides all this media, right? So where did we get this data? For free from Unidine. We got all the assets and menus and photography. When we posted it on these websites, we can track what's getting clicked on and what's making people pick up the phone or fill out a contact form. And a properly organized virtual tour or gallery kind of a setup is highly effective, right? Especially if the menus, PDFs of the seasonal menu are right there. And then when you have great food and a great dining experience, and again, I don't mean a luxury CCRC, I just mean a great experience, right? Um, how do people know? Do you advertise it? Do you ask your residents to share it or tag their family members on social media? But you can have your staff do that. You can, tag Chef Tony taking a picture with Evelyn and her husband on their anniversary, and the raspberry dark chocolate tart they had afterwards. Um, so showing, I just keep talking about photography, but actually showing photos of your well-staged dishes with your residents, tagging them on social media, getting their loved ones and family members involved, and routinely publishing updated menus or seasonal menus. That's what people are looking for. That really keeps you, for lack of a better term, on trend, and that's marketable. Um, Resident testimonials. So you're not a restaurant subject to the same type of reviews, but the praise you can get from your residents will often include words like love and always, right? It's not that you had a great experience at 9 McDonald's locations and the 10th one was a bad experience. If you're constantly dining in the same bistro and you constantly have a good experience, you've got a fan, you've got a raving fan that will be a testimonial beyond a review. So get that on video, get that asset on your website, and share the heck out of it on social media. And that's how you capitalize on cuisine.
You can also actually, one thing that we've done in the past is we've hosted events and opened them up to the public and to the community. So let's say, for example, you have a Mother's Day brunch, or you have like the tapas and tequila Dan kind of brought up earlier. You can invite people to come to this event who are potential residents, prospective residents. So in real life, they can experience what the resident experiences. Because when you think about it in reality, you want to sell the dream, but you don't want to sell a lie. You want to sell an authentic experience, and you want people to move to your community because what you're doing is truly great and it's real. It has to be real. And the more realistic experiences that people can have that are looking to move in, they're going to be saying, it may not be perfect here, but it looks great. And I've experienced that myself. And my friend Mary lives there and she loves Taco Tuesday and she loves the tapas events. That's the goal. Make sure that it's authentic.
The transparency is extremely important, right? The setting needs to match the menu a bit. 4-star restaurants don't look like McDonald's and fast food restaurants for a reason, but they simply need to match. The cuisine needs to match the environment. And it's okay if it's not all, high-end luxury. Not every meal needs to be filet. Not every meal needs to serve cake. But it should be an option. So keep that in mind, that it's okay if the dining experience in your community matches the community itself.
How do you make sure you set proper expectations? It seems unlikely that if I'm eating most of my lunches and dinners, in particular in a senior living community, that I'm going to have not necessarily a bad meal or a bad experience, but not something I'm crazy about. So how do you manage that expectation side so that people come away feeling delighted rather than disappointed? And Ashley, I think that's probably more your question, at least to start with.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. How can you make them feel delighted every time? I mean, I think it's about consistency. If you are using, let's say Chef, Tony prepares lasagna one way, but Chef Bill makes lasagna a completely different way. Yeah. If you don't have consistency in your recipes to match your menu expectations for your resident, you are not going to delight them. They're going to leave saying, God, I wonder who was working today. This lasagna is not as good as it usually is. I'm sure we've all had that kind of experience where you go back to a restaurant for the 3rd or 4th time and you order the same dish and you're like, I don't know what was in that food, but it does not taste like it did all the other times that I was really excited and I loved it. Consistency and execution of the culinary program, I think that delights residents.
Great.
You don't want to hear adjectives describing, breakfast oatmeal. You don't want to hear words like soupy, right? So I have found it in marketing, you can ask. I think you should have a maitre d' ask your residents how they're doing and how their meal was. And if you ever get a temporary period where, hey, I know it was Chef Bill today instead of Chef Tony, and everyone kept calling the oatmeal soupy, that's an extremely awkward experience, and you can do something about it, in real time or permanently, or you have a, staff issue, whatever that may be. Um, but ask for that feedback as though you are a restaurant. And if you don't ask, a lot of the time people just stay silent and they just don't refer any of their friends or family to live there. But if they're elated, you have a raving fan who will make it known to all those they love that they should come be there too.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
No,
Dan.
I was just going to add that to Dan's point, the follow-up is very important. So not only just collecting and gathering that feedback, that you go back to the resident. If they did say that Bill's oatmeal was soupy, well, help me understand a little bit more about that. What do you mean? What does that mean to you? Tell me more about soupy. Well, when I was making oatmeal in my house, this is how I made it. Oh, okay. So then you understand where that comment is coming from. So you have to follow up. Not only does it help you to understand how to make changes in the operation, it helps the resident to feel comforted that that's something that you're interested in helping to change and to make better.
Your team members take pride in this too, right? If you get into that, if you become a chef, you do it to please people, right? You believe that you're delivering happiness on a plate, and they can get demotivated over time without feedback, right? You need someone to say, that was delicious. Thanks, Tony, right? So give them that experience too. Ask your staff to go around and just interact, at mealtime, after mealtime, and get feedback. And typically, just out of general manners, more people will praise them than provide harsh critique. And you'll notice all of a sudden that everything just stays at a little bit higher quality level. Everything seems to have a little bit more motivation added to it, or an extra dash of salt. So don't forget about your team members being the key to all of this. The ingredients matter, the food supplier matters, and the media that they can provide to you. But involve your team, because they're exceptionally valuable to that marketing cycle as well.
And the one thing I would add, and this, we were talking earlier, before we started recording, we were talking earlier about storytelling. And a critical component that can really serve you well is, as you're having these conversations, keep track of them, write them down. You can use those in your marketing. You hand Dan real life stories that come out of the dining room from real residents, and they can create magic for you as they work to tell your story. So do you see food as an amenity?
I see food as marketable in the same way as your amenities, right? It doesn't need to be luxury. It needs to be transparent, but it should be leveraged. So it is an investment, not an operating cost. I firmly believe that. And so if you're making an investment, you want to maximize your return from it, right? So you should put marketing dollars into it. What we learned during 2020 was it actually has substantial appeal, and dramatic, double-digit impact on your digital marketing. That's where I'm saying this was an intriguing lesson. It's not just your marketing. You're not just saying you have a good menu. Putting it on your website specifically can drive, 30, 40% more phone calls. That is mind-boggling in a lot of ways.
And what's interesting is that food is a necessity, and that makes it an already paid for amenity. So you already have to invest in your food. It's the second highest budget line item in any senior living community. Food is a necessity, but it is an amenity. So you have to be using it to your advantage as you're going through and thinking about your marketing.
Yeah.
I'll also say this: any amenities you have, people get used to them, right? So maybe the first 6 months is exciting and there's lots of new stuff and a piano player in the lounge every Sunday evening, right? But you get used to that stuff.
Right.
Food, as recently as your last meal, you remember whether it was good or not.
Yeah.
So that's your real-time feedback loop, much more importantly than the lifestyle amenities or the luxury amenities you may have. Food is a real-time opportunity to get feedback and leverage in your communication.
And that's a great point, Dan. And what's really exciting about that is you can actually leverage food with the amenities that are already in house. So like you said, you have that, piano player. Well, you want to have like a jazz and cocktails night where you have some different kinds of appetizers. Or let's say you have a bocce club. Bocce, I say bocce because I play bocce ball. I love bocce ball. It's very popular in communities and senior living. But what if you had a pairing of food and hors d'oeuvres and beverages at bocce ball? So you're going to remember that bocce ball where you had a special food pairing with it. So why not use food, the already paid for amenity, with your other amenities and pair them together?
And we've seen it to that extent on the marketing side. There's a lot of lifestyle community content that comes from that. There's the bourbon boys, we call them, but we had a client provide us with a photo shoot of some gentlemen that get together every week and do bourbon tastings, and the group got larger and larger and larger. And these guys are best friends. It was amazing content. And then if you think again, lifestyle content, that college campus kind of marketing, you should have clubs and interest groups, and every single time they get together, there should be food and beverage, right? And receptions, even the word reception, I feel a lot fancier and a lot more included being invited to a reception than being told dinner's at 6 in the dining hall. So think about that experience too. Do you want to be invited to a wedding reception or told that you're at summer camp and it's time to eat dinner? It's kind of a childish experience.
Well, one of the things I like about thinking about dining as an amenity is that it's an amenity that that will actually that's easy to change up, right? I mean, if you're doing gold and marble or shag carpets are no longer the thing that you want to do, that stuff's tough and expensive to change up. But you can, as long as you're staying up on these food trends and what people like and what your local community, you talk about the micro dining choices. I'm not getting the term wrong.
Microculture.
Microcultures. Thank you very much. The microcultures really, really easy to make those adjustments to continue to create great experiences. So we're getting close to the end of our time, but you've got me completely convinced that I need to pay more attention to dining as a part of my brand, my branding. How do I, if I don't really have that as part of my branding or my brand, how do I go about making that happen?
Filet every day.
Okay.
I think, from a branding perspective, right, you want that microculture to be communicated, right? So that they know that your community is known for its food and its clubs and its receptions. So let's say you've done upscale cuisine, like that's not enough, filet every day. That's not enough by itself. You need that feedback loop and reviews. So we've seen signage have a major, major impact, right? Make fancy restaurant style signage. If you want thousands of examples, ask Unidine. I made a joke about it once, and they had photographs on their phones of all these places they've been, but it's amazing. You'll see when you look at restaurants and you drive around town, you'll see the outdated looking knockoff of Olive Garden, and then you'll see the slightly updated signage at Olive Garden, and you will notice the difference in how old the restaurant is perceived to be. So even if your community serves incredible food, a subpar setting could be undermined. So simple things like tablecloths and a centerpiece doesn't have to be fancy, just a tablecloth, a centerpiece. It ups the experience. And to my point earlier on, 4-star restaurants not looking like McDonald's, you do have to sell the experience. So someone, a maître d' of sorts, should be walking around asking people how their meal is going. That's the experience you would have at a 4-star restaurant. And then, when you combine these things, signage with personnel, with slightly upgraded food, right? Again, it's less expensive of an investment to upgrade food than replace all your shag carpeting. We can still market shag carpeting as plush and supportive and fall resistant, right? But the food, if you make that upscale and add the experience and signage to go with it, then everything feels better about that experience. So if the food is excellent and the setting matches, you are good to go. Those are complementary marketing assets.
Cool.
That's a brand.
And signage, and when Dan says signage, something that I think of that always resonates with every client that I've worked with and other folks that I know in the industry. Digital signage, digital menu boards, having something that's not just an institutional white paper that says cycle 1, dining and nutrition, St. Mary's. It needs to say, whatever the name of your venue is, Martha's Place, and it has to be digital. If it's digital, the great thing about that is you can infuse events in with that menu. So your menu flashes. 2 minutes later, that changes to the tapas and wine night that's coming up on Tuesday. And then after that, you have your activities that are listed. You need to be with your residents highlighting signage in a way that is innovative and digital and easy for them to read. One of the biggest complaints that I've ever heard is, I can't read the menu. It's too small.
Oh yeah.
If you have, so the right signage, having digital signage is very important, just so people can read it. They're going to have a great experience off the bat. If they have to go outside a restaurant and go like this, not working.
You can leverage the obvious too. So we had a client in the Southeast with marble and gold, right? A beautiful building, spare no expense. We kept quoting the guy from Jurassic Park, right? Spare no expense. And again, I would live there in a heartbeat. I would try to move in now, and they said I didn't qualify. But looking at it, they had a lounge area. Just you walk in the main doors, and very early on, you're in this large lounge. Probably 80 to 100 people could sit comfortably in leather seating, right? And they had a grand piano, not a baby grand. They had a grand piano, which they said was frequently staffed. They often had outside piano players come in. And they had a lounge, and they had a bar. And all beverages were included at this community. So you have an open bar, a piano, and a lounge, and it had no name and no signage. And so basically all of the residents loved it, and nobody invited anyone to hang out there. It was just the lobby. And all they did, this is all they did, they added the sign that says piano, bar, and lounge. And all of a sudden, 80 people a night were hanging out there 5 or 6 nights a week. And it's because they were finally able to say, like, hey, Ashley, Steve, meet me at the piano bar. They finally had a name that people could invite someone to. And so a brand can be that simple. Take what you've got, slap a label on it and have it match the experience that someone will have there. And you can build a brand pretty quickly, since you do have a captive audience in your existing residents.
Great. So we are just about out of time. I'm going to give a couple lightning round questions for you. So just sort of quick questions. So how does digital marketing amplify the positive dining experience?
Photography and video. Get as much photography and video you can of your setting, your people, your menus, and the food itself, properly staged. And simply leveraging that on your social media accounts, your main accounts, Facebook, Instagram, Google My Business, and on your website. That is sufficient to drive double-digit percentage increases in your call volumes.
Perfect. Ashley, anything to add to that?
That's perfect. And Google my, what was it, Dan? Google My
Business.
Google My Business, something that I never even knew about until Dan started talking to me about this perception or this concept of trying to drive occupancy by collaborating with dining and marketing. Most people have not done that. I started Googling some clients that I was working with, and sometimes there's a random picture of a street or a farm that looks nothing like the community. This is the first impression that you're getting. So why not change that image to one of your restaurants? why not change that image to somebody who's serving an exceptional meal? So when they click on your community, they're going to see somebody being served, a resident being served an exceptional meal.
I insist as well, no empty bistros, please. Stage, even if it's staff members, stage the rooms in your photography with human beings. It's much more relatable and much more trustworthy that it's your actual community and not a photo.
Yeah, they will know. And if you have your uniform, part of that image for the community is having a clean uniform. You'd be amazed to know that when we go into a lot of our communities we work with, before we become, a partner, the uniforms are inconsistent. You don't know who's from dining and who's from nursing. When you think about the dining experience, you should know who works for dining. I want to know who I can talk to if I don't like my steak. So please make sure to differentiate before you're taking your marketing photos. Make sure that the uniforms are up to date.
I want to actually sort of jump back a little bit to the tour. So we're starting to see people come into buildings more now. How do we leverage the dining part of it for the actual tour when you're getting people in buildings? We've sort of talked about the digital part of it, but let's talk about that experience of bringing people in for just a minute.
The reception concept, and actually I'm piggybacking off of your comment earlier about groups and community events. You can invite people in at a specific time. And I hear a lot, we actually track and record calls for, when they talk about this call is being recorded for training purposes, I'm the guy recording it and training your staff on it, right? So invite people in instead of saying like, oh, are you free between 2 and 4? Just stop on by and I'll walk you around. That's very different than saying, we're having an open house, COVID safe reception at 6:30 p.m. tonight and tomorrow. Which can I sign you up for? And then they can actually interact with other prospective residents, and you might get yourself a package deal, multiple move-ins with a lot more compelling lifestyle content than just an awkward, slow-moving tour.
Yeah.
And one of my biggest cautions is please don't make it like a timeshare presentation. I think the mistake that folks make is that they get people to come to the community and say like, coffee and donuts at X community name. And then it ends up being 4 chairs and the person who works for marketing in the front talking while they just gave them 1 4-ounce cup of a foam cup of coffee. Yeah. It should be an authentic experience start to finish, from the invitation to the event itself. So maybe even having some of your residents at whatever event that you're planning. And then at the end, biggest reminder, I would suggest having a sweet takeaway. And by that, I mean, whether it's a piece of cheesecake in a nice package, a nice craft box, or cookies that are made in-house, not cookies or donuts from Dunkin' Donuts. You want to make sure that it's fresh baked, on campus. Everyone loves something sweet, right, when they leave. So sweet takeaway would definitely be one of my suggestions.
Always a sweet takeaway. It's worth millions.
Millions. It brings a smile to your face. Who doesn't get happy about dessert?
On the tour, you'd also be surprised how many people enjoy the actual inside the commercial kitchen experience.
Yes.
Because there's machinery they're not used to seeing that they don't have. So the espresso machine, ooh, I like that. I want an espresso every morning. The frozen yogurt machine, right? That's a novelty, right? You know what? I am going to eat some frozen yogurt every day for the rest of my life. Yeah. So little things like that you may be accustomed to as part of the commercial kitchen you purchased, right? Those are tour-worthy things other than just walking someone around an apartment building in terms of the experience they can have. So cool espresso machine and frozen yogurt machine, you leave with a cookie or cheesecake, like that's fun. You feel like you were just on vacation instead of, well, my spouse's hip is starting to give out. I guess it's time to move because my kids told me to, right?
Yeah. Cool. Well, Ashley, Dan, this has been a great conversation. I hope for those of you in the audience, it has been a terrific learning experience for you. And so I appreciate your time, your willingness to think about this, to talk about this today.
I'm off to the cafe for some coffee and hope you all are as well.
See you at the bistro.
See you at the bistro. Thanks, everyone.